you will go ahead and do the roll call to certify quorum.
Sure thing. Town of Ashland, Miss Amos.
Here.
Yukon County, Miss Inman. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. Plan RVA, Mr. Bushing.
Here.
Mr. Ariel.
Here.
Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Here.
Charles Finney County, Vice Chair Adams.
Here.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas. Powhatan County, Brett Chardine. DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky. Mr. Hudson.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Simmons. Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Benuelos, Mr. Benuelos.
Here.
Henrico County, Ms. Myler.
Here.
Mr. Yor. City of Richmond, Ms. Clark. Chair Clark.
Here. Here.
GRTC, Ms. Robinson.
Here.
Mr. Robinson. And then VDOT, Ms. Rhodes.
Here. Good morning.
And Mr. Vidunas just joined, so I'm just waiting until he comes in. I believe we should have. Well, we're missing someone from Powhatan.
I think we have a quorum, right?
I think so, yeah. We should be good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to item 3, consideration of amendments to the meeting agenda. Do we have any? Right now, I think we have 2 discussion items and 1 action item. So I think we're good there if I don't see anyone. Approval of our December 10th TAC meeting minutes. Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Thank you.
This is Nora, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the voice vote, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Great. That motion has passed. Open public comment period. It's time for the open comment period. Sid, do we have anyone signed up?
No, we do not. I don't see anyone online, and we haven't received anything via email either.
Awesome. Item 6, TAC Chairman's Report. Nothing here. Let's go ahead into our action item, the item 7, 2025 safety performance target. Miles?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this first item is the only action item that we have on our agenda today. So this is our 2025 safety targets. Just as a reminder to everyone, safety targets are set annually. The state sets a target back in the summer, and then we have 180 days as the MPO to set our own target. The targets are all based on 5-year rolling averages, so it's very difficult to make any changes year over year. And unlike the state, we are not assessed directly on our performance for these targets. So Federal Highways assesses the state, and they have to make substantial progress. Ours are a little bit different. It's more for helping with the performance-based planning and programming through the LRTP and the TIP. So the performance targets that we're setting is the number of people killed over the 5-year average, people killed as a rate for 100 million VMT, people seriously injured, the rate of people seriously injured, and then non-motorized people killed or seriously injured. So each year we have to set these targets. What I'm going to do is just run through the data of sort of where we are, what our targets were last year, and how what we're proposing for the upcoming year, and then open it up for discussion for any changes to those numbers. As you'll recall, last year we had extensive discussions about how to set the target. And really there were 3 different approaches we looked at: a vision-based approach like Vision Zero, where we have a target and we want it to go down, so we always set a declining target. The data-driven approach, where we recognize that the trend is actually moving upward, so we adjust based on where the trend is headed. And then the hybrid approach, which is what we adopted, which is basically where the trend is heading upward, we try and set a level target to say we want to make progress, we want to bend that curve back down and start making progress towards eliminating fatalities and serious injuries. And so for 2025, we're proposing to keep that same hybrid approach, but there is some area for discussion in that, and we'll go through each of them. So we'll start with the number of people killed on our roadways. This chart was also in your agenda packets, but essentially what we did was we mapped out the number of people killed each year from 2006 onward. That's the blue dots. The 5-year rolling average is the orange line. And you can see since about 2016, we have been on an upward trajectory. So we have not been making progress. We've been going the wrong way. So last year, what we did was we set a level target of 107. So that was basically the goal was for 2024, we would keep it flat with where we were in 2021. The shaded area that you see at the top is sort of the preliminary data for 2023 and a forecasted range for 24 based on the data through October. Essentially, we looked at the past 8 years of crashes, what percentage of the fatal crashes occurred in November and December, and then came up with a range of potential outcomes. This seems to be pretty consistent in terms of the percentages year over year. So it's a relatively small range, but you can see the expectation is we're continuing that upward trajectory. So we have a couple options on setting the hybrid target here. We could follow what the state did and basically bump the number up to the last full year of data, 116, and set 116 as our 2025 target. Basically recognizing that we're still moving upward and adjusting the target, or what staff had proposed, leaving it at 107, basically saying we drew a line in the sand. That's the line, and we want to keep until we hit that. We're going to keep it at that flat level. So those are the two options we're proposing for this, and I will open it up to discussion at the end. But I just want to walk through sort of how we set each of these targets as we did them. The second was people seriously injured. As you can see, we made significant progress through the late 2000s into the early 2010s, and then it's been more or less level, a slight decline, but pretty flat over the past decade. Last year, when we set the target, we were at 872. So we set 872 as our target. It looks like we're going to hit it. In the 2023 was 871. The forecast range looks like we'll fall somewhere below, like in the 860s or 850s. So it looks like we're going to hit it. And so what staff proposed was continuing with basically just the near-term trend line where we've been heading, and move that forward, which is a annual decline. And that would land us at 843. The state's target setting was basically flat across the board, so it would put it at 871. So both of those options would be consistent with the hybrid approach. We felt that setting it at 843 was a little bit more aggressive and also reflective of the fact that we have been making some progress in this area over the near term. And then the third and final area that we look at is vulnerable road users. So pedestrians and cyclists who are killed or seriously injured on our roadways. As you can see, over pretty much the entire time we've been measuring the 5-year rolling averages, it's been pretty consistent, between that 110, 120 range. We did see a slight drop from 110 down to 109 in the 2022 reporting, but the numbers for the current year suggest that we're going to be heading up slightly and probably miss our 2024 target. So based on that, staff was proposing to use that 109, basically recognize that we got to a lower number and set that as our flat target for 2025. And that would be consistent with the state, which would be a flat target as well. So just as an overview, we have the current averages on the left-hand side, and this is from the last year that was reported in the official reporting. The proposal for 2025 from staff, for the VMT, we followed the state's assumption of a 2.4% VMT increase annually to calculate the rates. So we just followed what the state is. We didn't have any other data to suggest another number. So this is the proposal. And like I said, I really want to open this up to discussion, particularly on the fatalities and serious injuries, since we are deviating from the state on what staff had proposed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so thank you. We do have a question. Nora?
So what happens if we don't meet our targets?
So there's no direct consequences on this. So for the state, if the state doesn't hit the targets, basically the requirement is additional planning work potentially, and then they have to use all the HSIP money on safety projects that can't be flexed to other programs. For us, it's not like that. It's really, this is more of a internal performance control. And so when we have our quadrennial review, Federal Highways will look at this and see how we're doing on working towards safety and improving safety in the region. But really, the way we've been viewing this and what we talked about a lot last year was this is a chance for us to talk about safety a little bit more, and start making this more and more of the forefront as we're missing the target. If we don't hit the target, that's just another opportunity to talk about it, about what didn't we hit? Why didn't we hit it? Were we setting too aspirational of targets? Are we not investing enough in safety specific type improvements? I think it's really just a conversation starter for the board. So that's the way we've been approaching it. But like I said, there's no direct consequences to the MPO if we miss it.
And, okay, Amy?
Oh, good morning. Good morning, Madam
Morning.
Chair. And Happy New Year, everybody. So I have a question, Miles. So are we tracking like what the crashes were caused by in the Richmond area? So that we can start to make our investments to maybe reflect improving in those areas? That's my one question. My other comment is I absolutely think that we should use our targets and not just try to move the goal up. I think that's just not sticking with, being sincere about helping to improve safety. So, and also, just sticking with our Vision Zero goals as well, where zero should be the goal, not in 30 years, but now. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, if I may address Amy's question about what we're tracking. So
Yeah.
Amy, part of what we did with the regional transportation safety plan was develop the high injury network at a regional scale. And as part of that, we also were able to go through all of the emphasis areas from the state's strategic highway safety plan and basically determine which of those were most applicable at each locality, sort of which of those emphasis areas seem to be contributing the most to crashes. But we haven't done the additional step of actually then going in on each corridor and taking a look at the potential improvements. That's what's come through a lot of the safety action planning. So what the city of Richmond, Rrtpo, Chesterfield have done through the Safe Streets program have been able to dive deeper into those corridors and actually determine what are the issues and then conduct some of those road safety audits to figure out which improvements are needed. That is something that we have a potential to be involved in. Obviously, the MPO can do corridor planning as well if needed or if recommended by the TAC as part of like the next UPWP, but it's not something that we've been actively involved in to date.
Okay. So I guess just a quick follow-up, Madam Chair. So is that something that maybe you could just work with them on and or at least receive their information and be able to reflect that in, maybe it's not a direct measure as it relates to funding projects, but certainly it could help to guide investments in those areas and on those corridors for sure.
Absolutely. And staff has been involved in all of those various efforts. So we have been helping to support each of the localities, and we follow up with any of the reports and try and fold it in with like our long range transportation plan as part of this update. We're trying to make sure we capture all of those safety planning efforts across the region.
Okay, thank you.
So Miles, I know you said that you were looking at the hybrid. So the hybrid and the lower amounts is what you're recommending per the information you provided in the agenda. And so looks like Nora has another question.
Sorry, Nyrona. I wanted to see if other people had questions. First, as far as the numbers, I'm fine with staff's recommendations. But aside from that, and I'm sorry if this is a bigger can of worms for the region that I don't know about, but pre-COVID, we had a Vision Zero committee where we met pretty regularly, and that kind of went away. I still get the emails from Michael Sawyer, and I'm so thankful for those. And we send those out and get them on social media, all his like monthly recommendations. But where is there more of a regional Vision Zero approach, or is it still, Richmond's kind of got their thing going on? Can you just give it, Miles, do you have an update, or maybe Tyrona?
Yeah, and I could just say from our end, I know we stood it up, yeah, probably like 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, really to get the regions for the localities to start to do their individual plans. And I do think that that has begun to happen. And I think that where we could probably reconvene is now, and gives Miles less work, is to now compile each of the localities plans and really come up with what that vision for the region could look like from a holistic view. But yeah, right, you're right, Nora. It has been piecemeal because everybody else had to kind of catch up. So I think that in some cases with the larger, they're starting to catch up. And then maybe with any of the smaller localities, Miles, you could fold that in. But I think that it's definitely something that we can start back up. Richmond would get excited when others want to really focus on zero deaths. And I think that I'm so happy that the region supports that. And I think that, yeah, we definitely could probably cement some next steps for that. I know that Chesterfield has been doing their safety plan, I think, as well as Henrico, and they may have more input on like how their what help they may need from the region, or what they could fold into the region outlook. I'll go to Amy, and then Miles, you can chime in to Nora's question as well.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So could the rural localities, or specifically New Kent, join that Vision Zero committee? I
sure.
just received an email this morning from my sheriff, Lee Bailey, and he said there was a 68% increase in interstate crashes between 2023 and 2024 in New Kent, and primarily it went up. There's, like 3 cars involved now. I mean, obviously that's, directly related to the construction. But I think this is a good example of where the state could do better in terms of helping to improve safety in the construction zones on high traffic and high speed corridors like I-64. And I can tell you the fatalities are, they're happening, and the crashes are very severe, and especially when they're 3 and 4 car pileups, causing major delay for everyone. And then also the local sheriff has to come out oftentimes and work those traffic incidents. And because the state police doesn't have enough troopers out there to actually do that work. So that takes away our crew, our deputies that are supposed to be out protecting our local roads and local community. They're now refocused on helping with these incidents, these crashes.
I think
that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Miles?
Yes, thanks again, Madam Chair. I just want to say that this is all really great timing on this conversation. Part of our work program this year was to really stand back up that Vision Zero concept at the regional level and figure out exactly what the MPO role is in supporting everyone across the region. So part of that is we have heard that there's interest in having a regional unified sort of the education campaign, like what I heard mentioned to Mike's emails, something similar to that, but at the regional scale. But beyond that, we don't have a clear direction. So I think this is a great conversation, and I'm happy to put this on the agenda again for next month to have more of a detailed follow-up discussion with the TAC on how exactly you guys want to move forward. Specifically on sort of re-stepping forward and at a regional level on safety. I think that's a great proposal.
Awesome. And so with that, Miles, what's the deadline on this action being approved?
So the deadline for this is that the policy board has to approve it in February. So we are asking for action today on this one. And that's basically just the 180 days after the states, which is, I guess, August 1st, I think is their approval date.
All right, team. So the question becomes, are we okay with their recommendation? Knowing that potentially this time next year, we may have more poignant input to what those targets should be, maybe after we've looked at the region and Vision Zero as a whole. But otherwise, if we're okay with the recommendation, move forward with a motion for recommendation to the policy board.
Madam Chair, this is Joe Vidunas. I'll make that recommendation for acceptance of staff's recommendations to go forward to the policy board for approval.
Thank you so much, Joe. Amy, thank you for the second. Let me see. Let me look at my Miles. You don't do like chat and tell me if this should be a voice or a roll call.
No, Madam Chair, but I think we could do this one by voice.
Okay, perfect. So we have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Awesome. Well, that motion is approved. Thank you, Miles. All right, let me get myself. I don't have my glasses on this morning. All right, we're on item 8. Phil has the bike ped RVA 2045 update. Phil, you're muted.
Is everybody seeing multiple screens? That's not the right slideshow, I don't think.
Oh,
No,
I
we're-
see the bike ped RVA 2045. It looks right.
Okay. Well, what I'm seeing is a bunch of notes on everything. So anyway, if everybody's seeing the main screen here for the bike ped RVA 2045 plan update, that's good. And can everybody see the big ideas?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Well, we're off to a good start here. Yeah, so when we did the bike bed plan, which we adopted back in 2022, we had these 6 big ideas as a part of that. And we really want to focus on 3 of them today. The Create Regional Active Transportation Spine Network. And for this first part here, prioritize equity and access for disinvested communities in the completion of an active transportation network. So everybody should be familiar with our spines and spurs. We've really been focusing heavily on the spines and emphasizing that in our planning. Everybody knows about the Virginia Capitol Trail as we connect out to Williamsburg. We've had that for about 10 years now. We're working right now on the fall line, which would connect us between Ashland and potentially up to Fredericksburg and all the way down to Tri-Cities. And of course, the potential for the James River Heritage Trail and 3-notched out to the west toward Charlottesville. And then we also want to focus on our regional spurs. This is something that we're sort of emphasizing as we go forward. The intra-regional network, connecting places and communities to the spines and then to each other. So we've had a spines definition that was in our the bike ped plan, but we refined it a little bit here. A spine route refers to a major inter-regional active transportation corridor that serves as the backbone of a comprehensive interconnected network for bicyclists bicyclists and pedestrians across the Richmond region. So essentially, we've been talking so much about that north-south spine with Fall Line, and then the east-west with the Capitol Trail, and again, hopefully the potential for trail off to the west. So now we're working on that spurs definition. The spur refers to an active transportation corridor that serves to connect vulnerable road users to activity centers and or to the spine routes within the Richmond region on corridors that are safe and comfortable for users of all ages and abilities. So as we go back to the big ideas, that idea number 3, establish higher, well-recognized industry standards for active transportation infrastructure. And with that, this is a good segue really from our previous one, but that safety aspect, focusing on how do we get more of this infrastructure to focus on all ages and abilities, and then using that higher recognized industry standard for pedestrians and cyclists. The idea that you would have more people be interested in using active transportation at that point if it is a safer and more separated mode from the transportation from motorized transportation. And then as we've looked at it previously in our study, the level of traffic stress, 4 would be those highest, most dangerous roadways, and then 1 would be more like that shared use path, something that's separated. It's like that standard with the Capitol Trail or within parks. So that's level of traffic stress 1. That's the standard we would aim for to be the safest and most attractive for people. So why are we updating this now? Currently or just recently completed 3 major comp plans in the region for Richmond, Hanover, and Rrtpo. We know that the Transportation Alternatives Program, we're trying to refine it to have more points given to spines and spurs and neighborhood projects that are within our planning. We know that TAP, the pre-applications start this April, and we are currently also working on our long-range transportation plan, which previously we had very few of the projects qualify. So we're trying to have more of the projects actually for active transportation make it into that plan, the constrained list. So everybody should be pretty familiar with how we've been, compiling all of the data that you share with us. 9 localities. We've tried to become this hub for the region of all the GIS layers. So, I know you can't really see this map very well. We will share this in about a week after we've gone over this as staff a little bit more. But this is the solid lines are the things that have been built, and then the dotted lines are more of that projected. I'm sorry, not projected, but the proposed projects that 22 plan, the bike ped RVA 2045 plan. We had these pink lines that were conceptual, and we're just trying to emphasize here, this is the Atlee Station Road area and the Virginia Capitol Trail, and off to the left you can see Fall Line. So some of those are the dotted lines, as plans are reflecting some of the efforts to connect to these large activity centers and safer active transportation networks, utilizing that spine Fall Line. And then again, we've got several interstate issues, barriers in this area. So how are we able to best connect between localities and have those inter-regional connections in this area? So and again, filling in the gaps with where bike pedestrian active transportation infrastructure has been implemented. How do we then continue that and fill in those gaps? Couple more examples. This is in Chesterfield. That greenish line off to the right obviously is Fall Line, and then Chesterfield with their planning has been working from Fall Line. How do we have spur trails that connect off toward the government complex, which does have currently shared use path connecting several schools and the government's complex, and then trying to work its way towards Pocahontas, and hopefully eventually all the way toward, the Whole Street Road area and Swift Creek. So again, that's one of the spurs off of that major spine. Again, here in Henrico, the idea of connecting from Fall Line off to the east there, and again towards Innsbruck and even potentially beyond to Short Pump. Again, you've got major barriers with interstates, large, high volume roadways. But again, how do we connect within these neighborhoods or shared use paths, existing infrastructure that's already been built, and make our way towards these larger activity centers? So essentially what we're looking for here, we have the proposed map with all the proposed projects that you've shared with us. We've compiled that, and we're going to continue this week. We have a staff meeting to refine a little bit more some of our recommendations on spurs. Within that, we're going to share the spines and spurs definitions that I previously just showed in this presentation. And then we're hoping that we'll have this ready for you to review ahead of the TAC meeting in February.
Thank you. Bill, I do have a quick question.
Yes,
Before
ma'am.
I open it up. You said that which group will be reviewing the proposed routes, and what was happening before you bring it back to us in February? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yes, thank you. We have a staff.
Like an internal meeting?
Yes, between Miles, myself, Transit with Dan Mata, and Heather Barrar is on our group too. And obviously, she's very experienced with all the trails development. But yeah, we're refining some of our recommendations for spurs.
Okay. I'll take some questions. Barb and then Amy.
Chesterfield's currently kicking off an update to our bikeways and trails plan, which is being rebranded as the Chesterfield Active Transportation Plan. I put a link in the chat for our survey, our kickoff survey.
Yes.
We'd love to hear from everybody and your friends and family and enemies and I don't know, everybody. So please help us spread the word about our survey and submit your answers too. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. And I actually already filled in mine, and we are, as a Plan RVA, we're trying to help promote that as well. So yes, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thanks.
Amy?
We appreciate all the marketing we can get, free marketing.
Okay, okay, thanks, Madam Chair. So New Kent is actually winding down our comp plan update, and surprise, surprise, it has a fairly robust bike ped component to it. So we would want to be included in whatever you're obtaining from everyone's updates, but we definitely want to spur to connect on 155 to Charles City to the Capitol Trail as sort of a near term, and then a longer term vision would be on 106 connecting, but that's going to be a much larger project just based on the distance, and the terrain on 106 is pretty intense. So that's going to be a pretty significant project, worthwhile for sure. It would connect Shirley Vineyard with Jolene Winery, so we could have a wine trail. But ultimately, we want to be able to connect 155 with Secretariat. What we're trying to do is get the Secretariat monument in the circle for the winter circle, so we'll have the Secretariat Trail, right? So people would go on the Fall Line Trail and could come down and also visit the winter circle off of the Capitol Trail, right? So, I mean, probably no one's going to make that trip in one day, but it could be, you know, a fun thing for people to do who's interested in that. Thank you.
All right, so we have Joe and then Sharon.
Yes, thank you. Basically, more of a comment than anything, and it may not fit perfectly in this conversation, but I'm just going to put it out there and I'll continue to plug this, is that I think we need a group like this to maybe take an advocacy role and reevaluate or evaluating some of the VDOT design policies and procedures. We are finding it, and I'm sure you guys are too, it is just so challenging, even when we want to construct facilities, to be able to design and retrofit those in to the existing network. And I just feel like maybe a fresh, more kind of a more liberal or lenient viewpoint might be better for all of us. So that's it. I don't want to get off too far down in the weeds in it. I could give a lot of examples, but suffice it to say, it's very, very difficult and very, very expensive oftentimes to do things that the public would look at and go, this should be so easy. This should be a no-brainer, and it really is not. I
So,
think you guys know that.
yeah, thank you, Joe. And so, Phil, do you know if the regional plan can maybe address, like, you know, some of the perils in the work that you all will present? So, hey, it's recommended, you know, based on what Joe is saying, maybe aligning what is today and then some of the needs to maybe where this plan and policy may need to go in the future, maybe like a little section at the end of it or something that kind of highlights, hey, this is the great start, but there's still even more to be done. You know, maybe something like that to put it on alarm or to give that attention and then allow us time to really start to maybe, you know, really address it, like Joe's saying. Sharon?
Sure. I just wanted to give an update about Rrtpo. So our comprehensive plan is still underway. We are in phase 3. I dropped a link in the chat for rrtponext.us if anybody was interested in updates. And of course, we've been coordinating with Plan RVA and Phil. We have a draft bike plan that it's draft. We've still been working on implementing it because it was out for public comment already and restriping a lot of bike lanes and all. So Phil will continue to partner with you and the team, and this is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Miles?
I just wanted to add one last thing, Madam Chair. With the LRTP update that's underway, one of the big things that we're trying to make space for is more policy discussion. So I think last time we were very heavy on the projects and how to evaluate projects, and we didn't have as much room for policy. So we're trying to make more room for policy recommendations. So I think that would be a natural fit for the items that Joe's brought up.
Thank you, Miles. Yes, perfect. Thank you. I know Phil will be happy. He won't have to add anything to his plan. Look at Phil. Amy?
Okay, one last thing. I forgot to ask. Phil, are you going to be doing the bike safety group? I thought there was something in the work program this year for outreach. Is that happening?
I think, and I may be wrong, but this may be the effort where we were trying to have freight and transit also involved in, higher safety. Miles, is that what you're thinking as well?
So I think that was part of the discussion from the last item of we'll come back next month, but what we're trying to work out is exactly what safety needs to look at regionally as opposed to at the local level. So I think our discussion next month will help shape exactly what that looks like.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought that was a work program item, right? That was started in July. So that'll be good to get that kicked off and get some outreach efforts going for sure.
Thank you. All right, well, this item was a discussion item, so do we have any other questions for Phil?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Great job. Moving to item 9, Regional Funding Framework Review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is picking up the discussion that we've had over the last 2 months about updates to our funding framework now that CVTA is completed. we can focus more on the TPO side. Again, just a reminder, the schedule that we're operating on, last month we looked at existing projects and how those are factored in and project readiness. This month we'll be looking at timing and coordination and regional priorities. And then hopefully by next month we'll have wrapped up proposals to you so we can bring something back in March or April for a final review from the TAC. So a recap from what we did last month, existing project priorities, what we saw was there were competing goals. People want new projects and we got to get the existing projects done. And we do want to reduce our cost overruns. And this was the biggest priority that everybody had in our survey we'd sent out. So what we proposed was starting with this initial thresholds where we had project selection goes through everyone, up to 10% goes just to TAC, and then above 10% goes all the way up through the policy board, to adding another soft cap at 50%. And if it goes over that 50%, proposing that limited eligibility to the legacy, macroeconomic, or locality specific hardships that we discussed. We didn't have any changes on this. It didn't have a lot of discussion or proposals to change this part. On the project readiness, which was the second item that we'd covered, we really focused on ensuring that projects had done some of their due diligence up front. So making sure you had some of that planning or studies done before submitting it for funding. And the recommendation was, of course, to add that as a readiness factor after the cost benefit score. So basically giving a little boost to projects that were more developed and ready to go. One of the most controversial pieces was the LRTP inclusion, and that being worth the same as like turn movements or signal justifications. What we're proposing based on that discussion is just to strike that item. I think the understanding that I gathered from the conversation was really that the LRTP is sort of the bare minimum, that every project should be working to be consistent or already included in the LRTP. So that doesn't really have a lot of value. And again, these were all taken from SmartScale, so SmartScale isn't as tied to the LRTP as we already are. So I think that was a natural thing to strike. And we proposed leaving the weighting sort of the same for everything else. So this is sort of the proposal that's on the table, and we'll bring this back as the draft. But we did want to let you know that we heard you on the LRTP, and we were proposing to remove that from the readiness factors. Which brings us to the items that we really want to get into for discussion today. The first is timing and coordination, which was a priority in 2/3 of the surveys. Basically, what we heard was that we wanted to move to an every other year process, which we've already done. We wanted to make sure that we were coordinating with the SmartScale timeline, so we're not competing and submitting SmartScale and then having to go right back to RSTP CMAQ. And that we could leverage our funding as effectively as possible, mirroring what we're doing on the CVTA side. And then also that we wanted more time for project discussion. So for sponsors to be able to actually look at the scoring, talk about how projects were scored, talk about the allocations, and have more time just overall for the process. The second item that we wanted to look at is regional priorities. And this was really, it wasn't a huge priority. It was only 1/3 of the surveys that said this was a priority. But basically, the LRTP funding plan sort of assumes that we're going to be using all of our regional funding for regionally significant projects. In reality, it's only about 10% of the investments that we're making are in that scale of projects. In large part, it's because the amount of money that's available is just not enough to cover those bigger scale projects. So there's an inherent disconnect between those two. So that's something that we also wanted to look at and see if we needed to address. So possible solutions. On the timing and coordination, we had proposed 3 different options. New project selection in odd years only, which we've already done. Aligning our schedules with SmartScale and the pre-app deadlines, which we've also already done. And then the third item was reducing application limits. And this is really to allow extra time for the consultation. Coordination is by reducing the amount of time both applicants and Plan RVA staff have to spend on scoring and preparing all those applications. So this is kind of laying out the rationale on why that makes sense. So if you look at the TPO program, last round alone, which was on the annual basis still, we had $140 million of requests and 33 applications. And we only awarded just under $17 million in new project funding. So our average award was only $2.4 million. By comparison, at the CVTA side, we had essentially the same number of applications, but $210 million to award, which gave us an $11 million average award and a lot more projects. Smart Scale, similarly, we had 44 applications from the localities across the region. $140 million of new project funds were awarded. $14 million average award. And then I threw in TAP here because in TAP, we had about $10 million to award. We did 12 projects, just under $1 million on average. And really what that shows is the RSTP CMAQ program is more akin to TAP in terms of scale and what we're actually able to fund than it is to the CVTA and the Smart Scale program. But right now, we're putting in the same amount of work as CVTA. I mean, we have the same number of applications. It takes all the same effort to score and evaluate all those applications. But the money's not there to actually make that as worthwhile. So what we were looking at is there a way that we could reduce the applications, and what would that be? So one thing I pulled up was the application limits by sponsor across the three big programs, TPO, CVTA, Smart Scale. And you can see for the most part, you have more application slots on the TPO side than on CVTA, and about even with Smart Scale across the board. And I'm not going to go through each locality, but at the end of the day, there's potentially 70 applications for the TPO in any given round, 46 on CVTA, and 72 for Smart Scale within our footprint. So again, we have a lot more application slots than we probably need on here. So trying to figure out what the right balance is. And what we looked at was a couple options here. Reducing it all by a third, which would just bring everyone's down a little bit. And we picked a third because the smallest localities and non-locality agencies have 3. So just taking 1 off of those. And then the larger localities have 10, so dropping that down to 6. So that gets us down to 40 max, which is in line with CVTA. The other options we looked at was scaling it relative to CVTA and the amount of available funding. So if we expect there'd be about 32 million, 35 million available because we'd be moving to every other year. So instead of that 16 that we had last time, doubling it. That would be a fraction of what your CVTA slots, CVTA budget has been. So reducing that would be down to like 2 and 1 to be sort of comparable to the amount of money. And then the third option we looked at was kind of looking at like the RAISE grants or mega grants, any of those big federal programs where there's just a fixed number that any locality, any agency who's eligible can get 2 or 3, depending on the program. There's just a set number and it's just flat for everyone. So we also looked at that option. So those give us a range from 18 up to 40, which would be a significant decrease on the number of applications. And again, the goal here isn't to reduce the applications so much as to create more space and more time for us to dive deeper into the projects. So as we're reviewing them, we'd have the opportunity to have more discussions, more evaluation of how the scoring is completed, more talking about the allocation process and how we pick the projects. I think that the goal is to create that space. So I'll stop here. But this is the proposal that's on the table, is looking at these options and whether we even want to consider reducing application numbers.
Thank you, Miles. I'll start off the questions and let everyone else raise their hands. So I was just looking at the reduced by, I've labeled these now A, B, C in my head, but looking at the reduce the column A to the 40, we didn't, but per your previous slide, the total applications were only 33 though, right? So we're not, but it allows for at least 70, but only 33 has come. So I don't know if going to the 40 is actually going to change anything. The 1/3, if it's going to actually change anything, because we're still coming in with 30 or more applications, and we still would be allowed to. And of course, but yeah, so that's just my opinion on A. Do we have any other thoughts on maybe the second option or the third option? Or do we have heartburn with the application reduction? Barb, thank you.
I think the reduced by a third would still get us lower because I think the large localities tend to max out, right? If you say we've got 1 million applications, we're going to submit 1 million applications. So reducing us down to 6 will move the needle on, if you had 33 last time, it's going to go down. I'm pretty confident.
And Miles, yeah, thanks for that, Barb. I didn't think of it that way. And Miles, I guess it would be maybe just for information purposes too, those applications to kind of see what were the requests. Like, of course, Richmond, Henrico, Hanover, Chesterfield, did we do the max, and then everybody else did like 1? But just seeing that would be helpful too. But yeah, I see what you're saying now, Barb. Sharon?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with what Barb was indicating. For last time with Henrico, I think we had 2 legacy projects we applied for. Maybe there was, I can't remember, 1 or 2 new ones. So we weren't maxing out. I'm open to, reducing them. We're not currently maxing out now. Maybe it's reducing it by a third or reducing it by a quarter. I'd be more willing to go with, column A or B, or on that side instead of a fixed limit across the board.
Thank you. Nora?
Selfishly, 1 is not enough. 2 is okay.
Okay. Thank you. Joe?
I'm also in favor of 2. I forever have advocated for less applications. I just believe in put your very best foot forward and make the strongest application for your top priority. But it's just such an effort to complete these applications. And like Barb said, if you tell us we can do 10, we're going to do 10 because that's going to be the expectation of our admin. And if you said 12, we do 12. So I like B. I think that's the right spot.
Do you like B, Joe?
Yes, the middle
Okay.
one.
Barb?
I'm more in favor of A, reduced by a third, kind of taking some baby steps. I might have withdrawals if we go to B.
Oh,
Or if there's a compromise between A and B. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I don't know.
okay.
And Madam Chair, if I can just add a little bit more. So TAP, by comparison, everyone gets up to 5 applications, I believe it is. And as you saw, we only had 16. So I don't think we necessarily have to use every slot. I think the numbers that we had before were all set based on, we looked at an average of like the previous decade or something of how many applications everyone had been submitting and said, okay, 10 seems like the right number for the larger localities. But we had some years where it was like 20 applications from one locality. So I don't think we're in the same place anymore. So staff is comfortable with any of these options. The idea is just we're trying to create more space for that extra coordination that has been requested.
All right. And I know this is a discussion item, but I think, yeah, I think it's between A and B. And I'm probably like Barb, if I go from 10 and then I say that we put the applications to 2, I think my administration, somebody's head's gonna spin wig or something. Something's gonna spin. So yeah, so I would probably side with column A for the moment, like the baby step. If Richmond had to say something right now. All right, we have GRTC.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I was just echoing the same sentiment. I think that middle scale relative to CBTA is a bit harsh. We would have be a lot more in favor of reducing by a third for the TPO.
Thank you. So Miles, did you get enough information?
Yes, it sounds like the majority is leaning towards option A. So we can come back and provide a little bit more detail of what that could look like for our recap next month. And then really this brings us to the second item, which I think is going to be really quick. So hopefully we'll all be able to get on the CTB meeting and see how Smart Scale is going. Which is the regional priorities and regional priority projects. From what we sent out previously, again, this was only a third of people were interested in addressing this as a concern. And we'd proposed some options on how to make sure we're funding more of those regional scale projects, such as limiting it only to the projects that are in the LRTP, as opposed to any projects that are consistent, splitting funding between regional and local projects, so kind of splitting the pot, and then funding two separate programs, similar to how we split modes, or we used to split modes on the TPO side. And then including a regional element, so kind of like we did for readiness, adding in an extra for, is this project regional or not? And the reality was nobody really was interested in any of those options. So what we're proposing to address this right now is to do nothing. Basically, we're already moving to every other year, so we'll have a bigger pot. We're reducing the number of applications to let you try and get some of those bigger applications into. And then we're also updating the LRTP. So we might have a different definition of what's regional when that's all said and done. So basically, we're saying let's hold off for this round, see how it goes, what the changes are. Are we increasing the average project size? Are we making progress? Does the LRTP have a different way that it lays out how we should be structuring our funding anyway? And then come back and regroup if we need to do anything after we've done that. So probably in another after next round, or maybe even another round after that, depending on where it all lands. But that's our recommendation right now. If anyone has significant concerns on that, I'd like to hear it. But our proposals basically do nothing on this one right now.
All right. I mean, I can support that. Yeah, because I do think, we do want to see how we can best leverage all of our funding for the region. And being flexible, I think, is how we do that. And so, yeah, looking at that maybe in the future would be better. Any other thoughts from anyone on this? So the top thing is we're looking for the application reduction on the top first item he gave us, and then the second, do nothing this round of review to the framework for the regional priorities, which wasn't really a priority based on the surveys anyway. All right, any other questions for Miles? Miles, you have anything else you need from us?
Not today. Next month, I'll bring you back the follow-up, and then we'll look at bike ped funding and the time commitment, which I think we are going to be able to address pretty quickly. And then hopefully that'll wrap up the items that we were trying to review, so we can bring back a proposal later this spring.
Perfect. Very good.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to keep moving. We're going to move to item 10, transportation agency updates. Mr. Hudson with DRPT.
At this point, Mr. Hudson. Thank you, everybody. I have no significant updates at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson, GRTC.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page. GRC is updating our regional public transportation plan with our FY26 priorities. So we went over that last meeting, and Miles did send it out as an email. If you do not have a meeting set up, please get in your comments to me by end of day today. If you need a couple of extra days, just email me that and let me know that as well. We can be a little bit flexible on that. We are also just preparing for our February service update that go into effect next month. We also just launched, starting Monday, our Link microtransit onboard survey. So this is asking satisfaction, demographic, trip purpose questions. So we're excited that that's going to run through the first week of March. So if your area has microtransit, please push the word. We're excited to have the survey both available on board and through the app as well. We are about 75% completed on our pull station modification. So if you've noticed, we've been shutting down station by station and doing some minor reconfiguration, including extending our rev rail that the GRC buses kind of glide along before they service the station. So that is expected to be fully complete in April. I just wanted to give a quick update on our essential transit infrastructure plan. So we received 60 shelters last quarter, the last quarter of 2024. And then now we have 69 identified locations in Henrico and City of Richmond. And so that second shelter order is going out this month. So we're excited to get that moving. We did also hire a transit infrastructure manager. So Catherine Long is going to be starting with us at the end of this month. So we're excited to keep that momentum going. Laura and Guy have been great at the progress they've done so far, but having an individual dedicated to just that plan is really going to help us along. And then just lastly, the GRC Board of Directors meets on Tuesday, the 21st at 8 a.m. So everyone is welcome to join in person or to view it virtually. That's it for GRC.
Thank you. Busy around the region. Mr. O'Keefe, Ride Finders.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. December was a busy month for Ride Finders. We did meet with Walmart Distribution Center in Sutherland to present the density plot map analysis that we'd worked with on them and to discuss any upcoming transportation fairs. We also attended the Hanover Chamber of Commerce Air Park party they had. It was an event they had where we met some employers and discussed Ride Finders services with the air park community in Hanover County. We attended the GW Ride Connect 50th anniversary, their counterpart, the TDM agency in Fredericksburg. And we were able to contact with Quantico and just kind of talk with them about all of the van pools that we have going to their location, and also speak with them about having on-site transportation and benefits fairs at Quantico. And we should hopefully have some answers on that here in the coming weeks. We responded to questions that GRTC received from the federal NTD analyst on van pools for the FY24 annual NTD report. We did have 2 new van pools start, one coming from Chesterfield to the Fredericksburg VA hospital that's new up there, as well as one from Henrico to the Quantico Annex building. We submitted the Ride Finders CAPSIS report and the Board of Directors approval to DRPT. We continue to encourage carpooling and taking transit with sustainable holiday travel messaging through a series of social media posts focused on each mode. And we also received notification from our submissions that Ride Finders' 3rd annual Caring Commutes Challenge will be featured in ACTS, which is the Association for Commuter Transportation's 1st International Annual Report. And that is all I had for my updates, and I'll be glad to answer any questions anyone may have, Madam Chair.
Ms. Clark, you're muted.
Thank y'all. Sorry. Any questions for Ride Finders is what I said. And then if not, VDOT, Ms. Rhodes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to try to make this brief. Today is Smart Scale Day, so I know all of you are looking forward to watching the CTB meeting today. It just started 8 minutes ago, so we've got plenty of time until the Smart Scale review item. I know you all might have application over, paralysis at this point, but I did want to note that transportation alternatives and revenue sharing applications will open, pre-apps will open April 2025, April 1st, 2025. There have been some policy changes with transportation alternatives, notably public input requirements, and they are implementing application limits this round. So in the link for the VDOT update, there's a link that'll take you to the transportation alternative guidance. Please review chapter 4 of that guidance to just make sure you all are all in the loop as you prepare those applications. Not to be overshadowed by Smart Scale, but the other big news happening at the CTB action agenda today is the CTB will take action to award segment B of the I-64 GAP project. And so that is on the action item agenda today. And that are all the major highlights I wanted to hit from the VDOT update. I'll go ahead and send this to Janice for you all to review. The last thing I wanted to say is this is my last TAC meeting with you all. I have greatly enjoyed working with this team of people. Some of you I've had the privilege of working with twice. So I'm going to miss you guys very much. But as with transportation involvement in the Richmond region, nobody's really far from each other. So always feel free to reach out, and thank you again. Take care.
Thanks, Sarah. Good job. We've seen you plan RDA, VDOT, and we love seeing your growth in the transportation sector. So congratulations. All right. Reminder for everyone to please check out the Plan RVA newsletter. And we do have some TAC member comments. Amy and then Nora.
Oh, I just wanted to give my sincere thanks to Sarah. She has been amazing throughout the entire Smart Scale application process. So I just want to give her a great thanks, and she's always been a great partner. So I just want to say thank you, Sarah. We will miss you.
Thanks, Amy.
Nora.
Absolutely ditto on Sarah. She's my go-to for all the annoying questions she wishes I probably didn't ask. But separate from that, thank you, Sarah. I think I've mentioned this in the past. Don't get me wrong, I love virtual meetings. I hope we can continue to meet virtually forever and ever. But if we could consider maybe just once a year or twice a year meeting in person, maybe for the meeting where we do the changeover of the chairs, I'd like to throw that out there.
Thank you. We definitely can plan for 2025 something with food, Miles. I always want food.
So I have a breakfast presentation.
Yeah. Plan RVA, and they get those, CBTA get those good breakfast, those dishes you all have set up. That delicious food. Do we have any other? Yep, we have Barb has a comment.
Back in the old days, the agendas would have at the very top special presentation, and it would have a different locality every meeting. And that locality, the presentation was bringing food. When I first saw my name in a special presentation, I went into shock. I thought I was going to have to talk to people. But all I had to do was bring a box of donuts.
I remember those days.
I think somebody's watching. Let me let y'all go. Our next meeting is going to be February the 11th, 2025, 9 o'clock. Hearing nothing else, this meeting is